I was sitting on the bench, and he came back and he sat down, looked at me, and was like, I was like, okay, you're ready to go now. You've depleted yourself in the dog park. All right, we'll go.
Yeah, he's like me after I go. Oh, I feel so drained.
No,
Wait,
man.
there's more. Oh. We are Squawking Dead, a podcast pulverizing programs beyond the Walking Dead universe. Sometimes we give you news, sometimes we make you laugh. Most times we go deep. I'm your host, David Cameo, and I'm joined by Cosmom09, Rachel Burt, Sharon D, aka Blazy Gardner, and Bridget, ko-fi.com/PunkyBrewster. It's PONKYBRUISETER. And we're here, finally, to talk to you about an actual episode. It's the season 3 premiere of From, titled Shatter. I will say, we just recently redesigned our website. We put it on a different host, and so a lot of cool things are going to be coming from that. Just head to squawkingdead.com and check us out. All the things are easy to get to. It's very nicely designed, I think, but you tell us. You tell us in the comments. You can tell us in the reviews.
It looks a lot less cluttered than the old site did. It's a lot cleaner looking. In the old site, I would have trouble finding things, and I did not have that problem. Everything was very clear.
Yeah, the old site was more implied. It was all one pane of glass. It's like finding the details and Easter eggs for a TV show. You figure it out.
And while you're looking for said details, it's like you're having things in your eyes like this constantly.
It's way better. It's way, way cleaner.
Yeah. And there's an About Us page where we have our little links to where all our little entry points.
I guess I'm going to have to actually start
posting
posting stuff there since you put a link on it.
I put your information on every single YouTube video, so get crack-a-lackin', as the kids used to say a long time ago.
Yeah, nobody says that.
To recap you a little bit, our last few episodes were recapping the first 2 seasons. Season 1, Season 2. I think Season 2 recap was a little funnier than Season 1. A little less repetitive. I think we got a lot of it out in Season 1.
We didn't have Dave telling us, I wish you hadn't watched ahead the entire time.
No, Season 2, we're all caught up. We're good. But we still made a joke about it. It's fine. So in case you missed those episodes, I would highly recommend having the context before continuing to listen to this one. But you don't need it because we'll probably just bring it up all over again here.
I really enjoyed this episode. Actually, I really enjoyed this episode. It left enough at the end where I was like, whoa. But I also enjoyed that we got more with Tabby than I thought we would.
Right. You thought it would leave off and be like, where did she go?
I thought
what
we
happened?
wouldn't even touch it. So I was surprised. And there were some genuine scary parts. I was in bed watching it by myself late last night. Trav was watching, I don't know, something in the living room. And I went to bed and I was like, oh, wait, I have to watch this before I go to bed. Otherwise, I'm not going to have time.
And like a dog trying to get up. She just gets up again. She was all comfortable with her fleece.
I was surprised at some parts that were scary enough to have me like worried.
Let me ask you this. Is this how one does a season premiere?
That's a fair question. As a season premiere, maybe it wasn't that strong.
Okay, because I thought there were some things that definitely hit as a season premiere. Like you want to start off real strong.
There were some really good like starts to things, but the monsters speaking to Boyd, that they're like self-aware, I guess more than we really thought that they were to some degree. The trap, that part was good. So like they definitely switched it up for us at the beginning of the season. But if I'm comparing it to season premieres of other shows, then it's maybe subpar in that respect. But to be fair, it's MGM Plus.
So this is like Sharon D's argument from season 2, was it?
It's not like a network premiere. It's not like an HBO premiere or an AMC premiere or like even an NBC premiere. It's almost like a soft launch. I should clarify, that's also how I feel about Apple TV.
You shut your mouth.
It's kind of always a soft launch because there's not a lot of promotion in their product. There's not a lot of build up or anticipation
for the season.
I saw a lot of promotion for it
on the internets.
I watch a lot of TV.
I watch all streaming or YouTube
for stuff that's already out, honestly.
This will probably be the last episode of this show that I cover with you guys. I will probably jump in audience and listen while you guys talk, but I am not watching any more of the show. And it comes down to the last scene. I can't handle stuff like that very well. There are movies that I won't watch past a certain point because it gets into like torturous scenes and I just can't deal with it. It makes me feel bad, and I'm not watching TV to make myself feel bad. Walking Dead notwithstanding, I'm not a big horror fan.
not a big fan of torture porn, physical torture
That's why
porn.
I don't like the Saw movies. I won't watch those
Oh,
either.
yeah.
Well, to be fair, yeah, I don't really care for that
Yeah.
either. Ray, on the other hand, is like, yes.
That's what me and my son watch on a day off.
Or the Frightener series. I think that's what it's called with the clown. Is that what it's called?
Terrifier.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Frightener, he said. Frightener.
What is this, Michael J. Fox?
Oh my gosh.
See, that's the kind of horror movie I can get behind.
With Michael J. Fox and Jake Busey.
I can't deal with the idea of people being tortured and suffering. It hurts me too much. Even animals. That's why I was mad about the cow. If you're gonna kill the cow, then do it quickly, please. Don't make me watch it flash around.
He did it pretty quickly,
around
but it
in
still
terror.
suffered.
Yeah.
And it's different from The Boys because The Boys is like so over the top and comic booky. It's ridiculous gore. It's not the same. This was serious. They're trying to break Boyd. I get it. But you know what? I don't want to watch
But
that.
they broke you.
Yeah, they did.
I'm out.
I enjoyed the episode up until that point. But when it got to that point, I was like,
okay.
I cannot watch stuff like this. It makes me feel too bad about the state of the world, basically, because it's not real here, but people do that kind of thing in real life, and I can't handle that.
Yeah.
That's an extra
Yeah.
thing that you'd said when you'd first brought it up in the spoiler channel on our Discord, which was you connected with Tien Chen and it just hurt you to watch her suffer. And it was just too much.
I feel that way about anybody, though. That's why I try not to think about wars and stuff too much, because I know people are suffering for no reason. I don't feel like people should suffer.
Especially people that you quote unquote know, this character being one of them, which I thought was very, very endearing. I'm not saying I enjoyed you that you suffered. I'm saying I enjoyed seeing that side of you. Connect with this character, and watching her suffer sucked.
I am just very soft-hearted, and I can't deal with stuff like that.
On the note of that, though, what's interesting about this show thus far is that all we ended up seeing is usually the aftermath. It's just a hollowed out corpse with its insides missing.
And they talk
And
about
it looks
it.
pretty gross. Right. And they talk about it after it happens.
Show don't tell, but this is totally something I could have gone without being shown. It was gratuitous. It wasn't necessary. It didn't scare me anymore. It just grossed me out to the point that I can't watch anymore. At least where I'm concerned, they shot themselves in the foot by being that graphic.
It's similar to The Boys in some respect, that sometimes showing this is kind of necessary, kind of bring you back to where you're supposed to be. Yeah, this show is pretty funny until it gets serious. I'm saying about The Boys, not about not about From. But I think that's what makes this episode so interesting. The episode takes a concerted effort to say, no, you're not okay, and here's why. Kind of going to what, Bridget, you were saying. It's intentional. Wait and see. It's intentional. Everybody's saying, are you okay? Everything's going to be fine. It's just coming to a head in this episode. And I think showing that violence, listen, I'm not a big fan of it in real life, but it hammers the point home about what
I
you can
understand that,
lose.
Sharon, you didn't like it. I totally get that. But I think for the direction that the show is going, that they had to do this because it's a horror show that's shown very little of the violence side of it in reality. And so if you're trying to garner the attention of people who are into horror, this is what they want. Again, I'm not a huge Saw franchise fan. It is torture porn. I'm not really into that kind of horror.
Yeah, torture for torture's sake.
The special effects for it are really cool and everything, and that's always impressive to me. So I've watched all of the Saw movies out of curiosity for where the storyline is going. However, Rachel can rewatch them, I'm sure. I don't really have an interest to go back and see them again.
Rachel has this proud stance, by the way. I just want to
However-
tell the audio podcast. Arms folded.
If we're talking about 80s slasher movies, then yes, those have a lot of rewatchability for me. But they're on the campier side.
Like Nightmare on Elm Street, like I was totally down with those because much like The Boys, they were so over the top and so ridiculous that they didn't hit my sensibilities. But I
Mhm.
watched the first 20 minutes of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and when he hung the girl up on the hook, I was like, nope, out.
Yep.
Can't do it. It was too real.
I
I
get
just
that.
want to drop this here, and it's worth thinking about, but not really commenting on. I talk a lot of smack about Z Nation, but Z Nation's an interesting case study of what are you? Who do you want to be? Do you want to be taken seriously? Do you want to be ridiculous? Do you keep going back and forth? And it doesn't really transition well much at all. I still enjoyed it, but it was still there. I can easily see an argument for this show being somewhat the same way. Are you a suspense drama or are you horror? Because sometimes when you do genre switching, it can either work or it won't work. In the case of Charity, it's an example of how it might not work for everybody. You come in with a certain premise And then they start switching genres, and all of a sudden you're like, I didn't come in for this, and I don't really want it. So it's something to keep your eye out for.
I don't think that it's switched genres. It's been a horror show the whole time. It's just that they really did underutilize that aspect of it. And I'm not sure why, because I feel like if you're going to go for it, just go all in. But maybe they were afraid that they weren't going to get picked up for another season if they did that.
It's interesting because the first episode, you see a hollowed out child's corpse.
But like,
with
that's it. You don't
Megan's-
see it happening. You don't see the action of it.
I don't hear that child screaming and crying while they're
Yeah.
doing it. When it first showed them pull the chunk of her hair out, I almost quit right then.
Sorry.
But I was like, I'm going to see what happens.
Rachel's smiling. Oh my God. Why are you
Because
smiling?
the special effects were great.
Yeah, they are.
If
right?
I could put
So good.
aside the emotional part, the special effects were great.
I'm going to
But
do the play-by-play, though, by the way.
Believable enough to have such a guttural reaction out of you.
Yeah.
That's a big deal.
I'm sorry, guys. I don't want everybody to think I'm a wimp or whatever. I just can't stand stuff
No.
where I feel like people
That's
are suffering.
not- No, it's fine.
No, you're
I
an
understand.
important perspective on a watcher they may have ejected after this one episode.
How are
it's
we
fine.
friends, Rachel?
I don't know.
Listen, proof positive that
Because
you don't have to
opposites
love
attract,
everything
apparently.
to love each other.
Mhm.
Like my wife and I, we don't watch the same shows. We still love each other. So there you go. After we all watched this, we all, I think, thought of Rachel.
I don't know what kind of judgments are going to be passed on me or what kind of monster I am that none of this bothered me, even a little bit, not even remotely.
Did you enjoy it?
No.
No.
You can be okay with enjoying
To be
it.
fair,
No.
though, Ray, like you've seen behind the curtain fully. Don't you think
Yeah.
that allows you to be like detached in a way that maybe other
Oh,
people can't?
100%.
What do you mean by behind the curtain?
Because she knows how to do the
100%.
special effects. So, like,
Oh,
when
oh,
she's
oh.
watching it, she's breaking down,
To
like, how
clarify.
did they do that? She's not focused on what's actually happening. Like, she's
No.
processing.
Well, that's
How did
why
they
I
get
thought of
that?
her.
Exactly. When I'm watching Saw, Silas and I literally have like a Saw binge fest at least once a year where we watch all the movies. It's not torture porn for me. It's, ooh, that looked really realistic. I wonder what they used there. I'm not like, ooh, yeah, chop his head off because it's real in any sense.
From a horror perspective, in a time of CGI running in abundance in horror and sci-fi, Saw went back to practical.
I'm sorry, Charity. I know the death of the cow bothered you, but to me, it was very boys-esque because it was so overly dramatized. The flailing, it was not great. It was giving me Walking Dead deer CGI.
Oh,
But it's
Fair enough.
not the CGI, it's the idea of it.
which means it worked.
I was more worried about the goats than I was about most of the people. And had they just straight up killed Tien Chen, just slashed her open or whatever and left, I mean, I would have been okay with that.
You know the actress is still alive, right?
It doesn't matter though.
They didn't really kill her.
Well,
on
yes,
set.
I didn't call her by her actress name. I said Tien Chen.
But her character.
Right.
Her
I love it,
character.
though. I love it. It got you.
I am a little bummed that we won't see Tien Chen anymore. I did like Tien Chen.
I think we'll see a little bit more.
And we also have to think that Kenny is going to come home from his trip and find his mother dead and lose his crap. I'm sure
No.
that she will already be taken care of, but he's
Right.
going to come back and find her dead and blame himself because he left and wasn't there to protect her.
There's a little parallel because Ethan mentions, can you axe Alma first?
so
Because
she doesn't have to watch her friends
so
die.
Kenny leaves so he doesn't have to watch his mother die. There's a little grace in that somewhere in there, that all that horribleness.
Hmm.
I think he'll still come back and blame himself to a certain degree, but
He is only himself to blame too.
yeah, I have more questions and zero answers. I could talk for hours and hours about flippin' Tabitha. I want to choke slam this dumb. Oh, I can't even with Tabitha right now.
Why? Why are you so upset about it?
She kind of set the tone for the episode.
The episode does continue
Start with
where we
her.
left off. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right from the end of the
Right.
second season.
And she immediately put me in a bad mood. So it's like the rest of the episode sort of like,
You know, that is fair, actually. Had they not started with her, maybe the framing would have been a little different of how you would see this
if
episode.
things would have just gone differently.
However, the writing on the show is very layered and intentional, because the bigger theme of this episode is why you don't like Tabitha. Let me just throw this out there, is because you're not thinking of whether or not she trusts that she's back until she finally calls her mom, and then she's pretty sure she's back, because she doesn't know if she's to trust what she's seeing is the real world too.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a lot of context about how she is throughout this episode. She's not panicking about whether to get back to her kids, because she doesn't even know if she's back. It's scary to think that you've been in a place that you are absolutely certain that you are stuck in, and so you don't trust what you're seeing, because there's a lot of reason to not trust what you're seeing after people have been seeing visions of things.
What do you
That's
do?
exactly how I watch the show.
How do you even get back there?
And that's a secondary
You
question.
couldn't.
That's the worst thing, ending up in the real world again, because, well, everyone reported you missing. Let's say any one of us just disappeared and we're stuck in the tall grass or whatever, you know? All of a sudden, let's say you come back, you know that they're going to call the police. And then you have to answer questions about where you were. You can't tell other people where you were because they're going to think you're insane. They're going to institutionalize you, or at least try.
And it's a delicate balance, because then you'll never get back.
Yeah,
Maybe,
exactly.
unless it's how you get back.
What do you even do? Honestly, her idea of going to Victor's dad was probably a better idea than anything else that I probably would have come up with at the time.
Yeah, that's probably the only move she made that I can agree with.
And even going to the church is one of those moves that when you're lost, you think that's one of the things that you can hold on to.
Seeking
comfort
what else can you?
Your faith. That makes sense.
But even that
too.
you can criticize, obviously, as a person like, oh, I'm eating my popcorn over here. Why did you do that? That's stupid. What's the priest going to tell you? Or I don't know the clergyman's name. I'm not a Catholic. I just don't know.
It's a priest in Catholicism.
It's a priest. Okay. I'm a Jew.
The clergyman.
And rabbis. That's it.
I don't do confession. I'm not Catholic, but
Right.
but I have to
either.
say there is some sort of solace in, she's like, I don't even know if I believe in God, but at least based on what we know of her upbringing, I assume that felt natural to go there. It felt like it would be safe.
Can I be honest with you? If I was in her position, I probably would do the same thing. Jew here, going to confession in a Catholic church, you need a rudder. You need something.
Yeah.
And you don't have the money to see a therapist.
That's all I could
Unless you're
think
being
about when she's
institutionalized.
walking the street. You can't access your money because you don't have any ID. Even if
Exactly.
you did have your ID on you, you're going to go in a bank and they're going to be like, you've been reported as missing.
Yeah, your assets would be all taken away or sent to your next of kin. Or
There's no logical way for this to go. Like,
My feeling is if she showed up out of nowhere without her family and they were missing all this time, they would probably assume that she had murdered her family
Right.
and take her to jail.
Is that blood all yours?
hmm
Well, they can
On your
test that.
clothes and stuff, or not? Do not pass go. Do not collect 200. Goes directly to jail.
How long have I been gone? What is the date? What year is it? She didn't ask anything, which I get. You're like stunned that you just woke up in a hospital room out of nowhere. I get it.
yeah.
But pull it together and ask some pertinent questions about what's going on instead of just wandering off into
Wow.
the street.
So that was an interesting thing too, because on top of not identifying herself and on top of not knowing whether she is even actually back from the stuck place or the stuck place isn't through with her just yet, because clearly she sees the boy in white. There's the additional thing of, well, A, do I ID myself? B, do I ask too many questions? Because if I ask too many questions, they'll think I'm crazy and automatically throw me in a place where I can't get out. There's something smart about, for all the things you could criticize her on, the end result determines that her playing it the way she did made it so that she could leave and at least make it to the first part of her quest as the Chromonocle.
Did she see the boy in white or did she just think that she saw the boy in white?
Oh, I mean, you could argue that till you're blue in the face with anybody,
How do we trust what we see?
right? But I will say, it seems like he is leading her on a quest. When he said, I'm sorry, this is the only way, in my head, he meant like, this is the only way for you to get back to the world. But Tabitha believes it's something else. It's the only way to something, not to be back, but to get answers about something, which clearly has to do with Victor.
And more to the point, maybe she's already skipped ahead and said, oh, it's not just about getting back. It's about getting everybody home, maybe.
Maybe
That's what he meant. But she needs confirmation that that's what he really means.
in my head, Victor like didn't even have a dad, so I was like really shocked by this. I
Yeah.
don't know why.
Looked like his brother more than a dad, by the way. I
That's
just
fair.
wanted to say
It
that
did.
out loud.
That's fair.
I feel like she needs to go on Facebook and look for like a spooky Lost City support group or something and find all the other people who've been pushed out of the lighthouse and come back to the real world, or died and come back to the real world.
How will she get a phone?
The internet's in libraries, man.
Right, you can go
You
You
anywhere.
can't use the library without a library card. How are you going to get a library card?
Go buy a burner smartphone and look up that kind of stuff.
She ain't got
With
no
what
money.
money?
Well, go pimp yourself on the side of the road. Go sell
my
your
God.
lunchbox.
What did you?
I said, go pimp yourself on the side of the road. Go
what
sell
I
your
thought you said.
lunchbox
Yep.
because that
She
lunchbox
did.
is probably worth a fortune.
Sell your body to sexual slavery, Tabitha.
Hey, if you really love your family, you'll do it, okay? I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
I was like, wow, this is a hot take. You don't love your family very much because you didn't prostitute yourself. What?
Camden is a city in Maine. It is where they filmed Peyton Place, the movie, in 1957. It was turned into a TV show in the late 50s and early 60s and was like the first primetime soap opera. It was all about the passions and whatnot in this tiny little town, everybody sleeping with everybody else. Anyway,
Basically, a Danielle Steele novel come to life.
Risque.
it was a really
Gotcha.
big thing in the 50s. And also, somebody famous from Camden is Hannibal Hamlin, who was the vice president of the United States from 1861 to 1864, which is one of the years that is carved into the wall, which is 1864. And also during the Civil War, which is why we saw Confederate soldiers, would be the same time period.
I was going to write that down, but I thought you might bring it up.
I think it's interesting that she ended up in Maine because Maine is connected with a very famous author that I've mentioned a bajillion times.
Central.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a tip of the hat to him.
Mm-hmm.
I was sending Sharon running commentary while I was watching it. That's exactly what I said. Stephen King is watching this, rolling his eyes right now.
Yeah, because he's Castle Rock.
Not
Come
You
true.
on.
stole all my ideas and you did it better on a TV show because I am not good at directing. Those were his exact
On
words.
Twitter, he actually mentioned how much he loves From, by the way.
Well, it
just a
pays
little
huge homage to
nod.
him. What a
Right.
form of flattery. It's
Right.
a whole
Sure.
show.
I just wonder if the vice president of the United States during the Civil War, him being born in Camden, has something to do with the Confederate soldiers that we see later on.
Other than it being Victor's story his mom told, which is why he drew the Confederate soldiers as a child.
It could be
Maybe.
that the years on the wall are all the times that more than one person shows up because they say that's rare and then everybody dies. It wouldn't have been anything if you're in 1864
That's
and
a good
you're
point.
a bunch of soldiers out getting ready to go to battle and you run into the tree on your horses and you wind up here and now everybody dies because more than one person showed up. The numbers are 1506, 1864, 1609, 1752, 1931, 1883, 1978, which is Victor. And then this looks like 1672. It's really hard to tell. And then there's some other numbers that I can't make out.
I should also maybe pump the brakes on this. First of all, we know that people are coming in from all these different places. And like you said, maybe there's a connection between where Tabitha ends up heading back to where Victor was originally from. Maybe the boy has something to do with that. I didn't mention this when we were covering the second season recap, but I'd taken a closer look at the title sequence after we were slamming it all this time. And I said, you know what? Maybe I'll just watch it. I know there's a ton of Easter eggs about where this show is actually going to go, but there was one detail that I've noticed. There's a frame of the burning skeleton that was drawn on a newspaper. That newspaper is from some Indiana paper. Newspapers back in the day would post articles about literature, time period pieces, times of war. This was about something about the Russians. Either way, the newspaper was from Indiana. And I thought maybe this place was somewhere in Indiana or something like that. This stuck place was lifted up and placed somewhere else in some other plane of existence. Word for word, that newspaper is a real newspaper from a real paper that I found on the internet that was scanned in and written up basically based on what was scanned. Some of the words were off because it couldn't quite make out some of the words, but it's a real newspaper from somewhere, not made up words and stuff.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So it could be a clue, but figure we'll just leave it there. If you guys are really, really interested, I have a link to the actual paper and I'll put it side by side with the actual drawing in the blog or something.
Is it the lack of answers that's really getting to you?
Yes.
See, what I'm surprised is that you like Stephen King.
He gives me answers.
Oh, yeah.
He doesn't always.
Kind of gives you the answers to things you didn't ask questions to all the time, like
Yeah.
details.
When I get to the end of a book, I know what's happening. Even throughout, I get little answers to little things, this and that. not just more piled on top of more and more and more. It's just so much. I think that's really what I'm having a problem with. It's not that we're not getting any answers, because yes, that's the draw, is the mystery. I think what I'm getting frustrated with is that I feel like things just keep piling on. I can't even keep everything straight. And my Charity's talking about these dates, and I'm like, what date? I had completely forgotten about it because so much had happened since then. And it's like, oh yeah, is it relevant? I have no idea. There have been things that happened in the first season that I've completely forgotten about. Are we ever going to touch on any of that? Who knows?
Undoubtedly. And then they'll bring it up and we still wouldn't have remembered it.
And okay, at the end of it all, when we get to the very, very end, which who even knows how long that's going to be? I mean, do they say how many seasons the show's going to be? Is it just going to go on forever? Well, I mean, not forever. What are they, The Simpsons? That'd be horrible.
Your point, that would be horrible.
Right?
To Charity's point too. It's a lot to put on an audience to see, kind of like when you see the Pratts, Megan and what's her name, get murdered, the mom, the wife. They start out strong.
I'm like, who?
And they kind of lull you into the sleep where you see this corpse of a child and her eyes are open. It's probably the real actor who's laying there too, being this dead person. They start off real strong, lull you into a sense of, well, maybe like the people in this town, this sleep. Everything's going to be okay. Is everything okay? No! and then they finally come here, and here you are, and it's horrible. It's hard to watch. I couldn't imagine ebbing back and forth between this kind of place where, oh God, how much of this torture can I watch without some sort of wins and losses or some sort of balance in the wins and losses? Because there's only so much. I think even The Walking Dead had its wins. There were some periods of time where it was like, is this a Stanley Milgram experiment? Am I a bad person for watching this show? Watching people suffer because they keep gamifying us. They keep telling us, oh, it's going to get better. No, it doesn't get better. It's the same thing with the show. Is it going to get better for these people? They start out real strong on the suffering end of things. And I feel like in some senses, that's an answer. It's not a concrete answer, but the monsters speaking to Boyd, keeping him alive. You get a hint of that with Kelly in the last season, where they keep her alive and nailed to a tree to watch Brian, her boyfriend, suffer. So now you see Boyd. This is an escalation of some kind.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is like, that's what's scary about it is because, yes, they did do that to Kelly, but that was shocking to all of them. They were like, they've never done this before. Like they kept someone alive. That's weird. So for them to create this elaborate trap is
opening
terrifying.
The paddock and the barn, letting the animals loose.
It kind of leads back to Elgin saying, I know that Boyd is saying it's safe to sleep now, but I feel like something's watching me. So even though the music box like wrapped up, it didn't really, because now it seems like something worse is still around. The monsters are self-aware now in a way that we haven't seen prior to this. Like, why weren't they tricking people earlier?
Yeah, why is this the first time they've opened the pens to the animals?
They've been tricking people, but they've been tricking people to let them in. It's never been
to convince them,
lure someone out.
Because somebody finally killed one, and so they're like, oh, we got to step our game up.
Yeah, I guess so.
And maybe that guy was the only thing holding everybody back too. That smiley ginger Bob guy that Boyd killed.
Maybe the other monster is still there, and it's directing them to do these things.
How is Smiley holding them back? I don't understand.
All I know is that he's gone, and now they've started changing their behavior. Was he the leader? Did he say, you got to do the same thing every night, the same way? You got to convince them. You can't really trick them. You have to convince them to open the door. You're breaking the rules otherwise.
So we're done with the music box gimmick?
Yeah, that's all done. Maybe.
What was the purpose? Was it real? Was it in his head? Why was this music box there? What did that have to do with anything?
No, it was real.
Well, I don't understand the purpose of the music box storyline.
It was to let the other monster into the main world, which they did. And just because they smashed the music box doesn't mean they killed that monster. It could still be there. It's just not doing anything at the moment or something. It has to make a new plan. Maybe that's the first time his plan has never worked. He's hiding out, waiting until he can come up with something else to do. And so he's told the other, hey, your leader's dead. Do something else.
You're talking about the worms necessarily,
yeah, the worm
right?
guy. The worm monster, or whatever it is.
But he's basically Freddy Krueger. Not being able to sleep is
But that part's over too, really.
Right, like that was tied in with the music box. In order to stop it, he had to stop the music box. And so once he stopped the music box,
Before it
that
stopped.
thing was over. So now that's over, but he's like, oh crap, that's the first time anybody's ever solved this. And so now he's got to come up with a new plan. And so meanwhile, he's like, hey guys, mess around with them, try something
Hey,
new.
monsters in the dark.
Right. Smiley's gone, try something different. Just don't let him get near enough to you to give you worms.
Well, and also they're poisoning the soil and stuff too.
Are they? Or is this just the general force of this place exerting, again, trying to break them, trying to make them
The
suffer?
evil there is poisoning it. I'm not saying like the monsters are going out and like touching their vegetables.
That's what it
You
sounded
mean it's
like.
not like
No.
Charlie putting weevils into the crops at the baseball stadium?
No,
On Fear the Walking Dead. Gotcha.
it was buried and it was rotten.
It could have been like the rainstorm
Right.
that came was like some kind of damaging rain.
Like acid rain.
Yeah.
That they used to talk about a lot in the 80s. Then all of a sudden it doesn't exist anymore.
They did. I was very fearful of it as a child. It's not
Remember
really a thing.
that Different Strokes episode where Kimberly was washing her hair, and because she used the copper pot and it was acid rain, her hair turned green? Anyway,
No, I do not remember
I want
that
to bring it
anyway.
back to Different Strokes,
I
everybody.
loved that show.
All right, no, I'm glad you brought up good and evil because some answers I feel like were, again, nothing concrete, but when the priest goes, what snack did Victor pack you? It seemed like when she mentioned Thomas, my son, falling off the changing table, and he got really concerned, and there was something in him that lit up to go after Tabitha.
When he first said what was his name, I was like, oh, dude, this is Thomas all grown up in the future. Immediate
thought that too.
Yeah.
Oh, I was thinking he was going to know who she was because the death of her baby was huge news or something.
Or she came back and that never happened or something. I don't know. But it would have been more interesting anyway.
Right.
It would have made me more angry because it would have just been another thing. Sure, why not?
It was a passing fancy gut reaction. I wasn't really thinking too seriously about it, but I thought him thinking this was something. And in the final analysis, it wasn't even him mentioning the thing or just going, it was just the significance of him feeling prompted to go after her. And then that leading to her looking in the actual lunchbox after he asked, what did Victor pack you? You know, it's funny, Victor, he's still a child. And she opens it up. And the sandwich that he wrapped, or whatever it was, the snack that he wrapped, it's one of his drawings. So we may end up seeing what that was, A. But B, her actually looking at the bottom of the lunchbox and seeing the address was kind of cool, which tells me one thing, at least from a narrative perspective, or maybe a spooky beta-esque sort of thing, is that there are forces still at work that are outside the town in this show. There are good forces on this show. And I'm going to also say, as scary as the kimono-wearing, desiccated yet spraying water everywhere creature that Elgin sees in his sleep is scary, like Tilly says in his dream.
Is it scary?
Ooh.
Well, to Elgin, she's scary.
Okay.
However,
that's fair.
could be that it doesn't have to be a bad thing. Now, he does say, I feel like I'm being watched. True. And that's already unsettling. But what if this person or thing or whatever it is has been helping him?
Watched by Tilly. She's the spy.
Oh, right. That thought did occur to me, by the way, because when he wakes up, where is Tilly? Nowhere to be found. Interesting. What if that's what Tilly looked like when she was younger? That's all I'm going to say.
I also want to say that there's 7 Ankui kids, and Tilly mentioned that she has 7 grandkids.
Huh. That's pretty interesting. How many kids did she say?
She says, I have 3 children and 7 grandchildren.
I've only seen 2. Where do we see 7?
When Jade goes into the tunnels and he ends up in that room with the cages and then he sees them on the slabs and you have that overhead shot. You see 7 children that are lined up around him. I was counting as I was like, they keep growing in number. And then I noticed there's 7, not 6. Like in the earlier scene, it was like 4 or 5. But maybe, Charity, you might be onto something.
Wonder if Tilly is the embodiment of the monster.
Keep going with that thought. What makes you think that?
We're a little squiffy on the time between the bus getting there and, I almost said Walt. Boyd. Boyd getting his worms. Or maybe she's the other way. Maybe she's the embodiment of good and she's trying to get revenge on the evil for killing her grandchildren or some shiz like that. She's the one that's running the boy in white. She was the one that brought the ballerina so that the ballerina would lead Walt. God dang it, I said again. Boyd. His name on the show wasn't even Walt. It was Michael. Okay.
To be fair, he was always screaming Walt.
Right.
So.
Or maybe she's in an in-between place. Maybe she was spared. Her grandchildren are all gone, and she was left behind
Maybe
to
she's the reason the bus is there.
suffer.
Maybe she's trying to bring about another massacre so that they can end it somehow. Or maybe if everybody there dies, then the place ends, and they have to have at least one person living.
Outside of the maybes, there's something to be said about what you just said, because one of the things that I noticed was Victor is the only one who is spared the wrath of this place. Christopher ends up, the one who basically ratted out all the people in the town. Victor's mom outsmarts him by hiding the kids in the root cellar. It's the only reason why they didn't find them. Victor and Eloise were spared until Eloise goes, "Mommy, I want to go after you."
I
And
forget
he
about
finds
Eloise
her.
because she died immediately after.
Or maybe, did she? Maybe she's the one building all that crazy stuff out in the woods.
I hate to say it, but it's very possible that Victor did find her, but he doesn't mention it. He mentions he found his mother's corpse, but I don't think he mentions finding Eloise's corpse.
Oh, that's her. That's Eloise.
Oh, maybe. Anyway, so kind of like what Abby says. We have to kill everybody here in order for this nightmare to come to an end. What if that was happening back then? And let's assume that it was. This is the only way to end this place is to kill everybody in here. If we don't sacrifice ourselves, this place continues doing what it always does and pulls people in. But Victor being alive ruined all of that. And this nightmare kept continuing because Victor was spared. So I wonder, this place was probably supposed to end a long time ago. And just the fact that people continue to try to survive is
Maybe
the
it's
problem.
some kind of experiment to see how willing are people to kill themselves to save everybody else.
And to save future people from arriving. Kenny says the thing about his dad. His dad said, we're all threads in a sweater. Maybe we don't matter in the short term, but our contribution here will matter for the people that are meant to come. Let's say something to that effect. We're just threads in this sweater. We can't see the sweater because we're a part of it. I don't like it because I have feelings for the people on the show, like you, Sharon D. I don't like to see them suffer. And the show has to do a really good balance of watching them suffer.
They don't know that, but if they all die when they go home, then nobody really suffers.
Well, listen, the fact that we're seeing Victor's dad, I wonder what that story is, that Tabitha runs into him. Where did you get that lunchbox from? That was my son's, probably, he'll say in the next episode. And there's a thing about that. Means that they don't get to come back. Let's assume that they do. What do they come back as?
The dad might have been abusive or something, and they were on the run. So if the mom came back, she has the same problem. She came back, but her kids didn't, and she's having this problem with her husband. The police would just assume that she had taken her kids and murdered them in the woods. If she did come back, just took off. Never went back to her husband.
You know what? Possible. Maybe she encountered his wife.
Didn't Victor find his mother dead?
The corpse of his mom, yeah.
So
that
she
we know
didn't
for
come
sure.
back.
But that doesn't mean she's not alive in the real world.
That'd be interesting. That would be an answer, right, Rachel? You're thinking because the show builds it up this way, is that, oh, Abby's crazy. Abby went nuts. Abby, what are you talking about, Abby? We live in the real world where there's rules in the real world. You can't just kill everybody and just expect everything to be okay.
That's what I was trying to say. What if she was right?
But I hate that. I hate it so much. I would hate that to be right.
Well,
but
we don't know yet.
But maybe I wouldn't, because maybe I like the fact that they're not following that convention because that's what people would normally do. It's crazy.
Somewhere along the line, someone is going to get this idea. And Kenny, having lost his mother and father, kind of running with that and saying, well, I'm just going to do away with myself because I'll go home and I'll see my parents again.
Kind of like the guy that hung himself from Colony House.
Yeah.
Every time you're like, well, this is for sure. We're like, well, no. What if it's not even real? There is literally nothing concrete to hold on to in this show.
So, by the way, and that's why it's really hard to criticize Tabitha, because we're in the same boat as she. We don't know if she's back. We don't know if this is all real. It's not easy to trust what I'm seeing.
I agree. She's in a very confusing predicament. But like Sharon D pointed out, ask some questions. You don't have to give your full story. You don't have to be like, my family's in this weird monster-filled town. You can just ask simple questions. What is the date? Where am I at?
No, because asking the day gets you in trouble.
Oh, the police are on their way. I'd be like, oh, okay. Sharon and I kind of had a very short conversation about how, yes, it is a risk to like talk to the police, but she was found on the side of a trail or something like that. When they start asking her questions, she can...
I mean, she wasn't lost?
Legitimately say, I don't know. I don't remember anything. It would not be surprising for her to have some sort of amnesia after a traumatic event like that. The police would believe she does not have a memory of what happened.
Yeah, but they might ID her and then they'll connect her with the missing family. And then there's, you know what? I like that it's imperfect, period. I like that it ended up working out, maybe questionable for her because she's still in the game. We don't even know that. True. As of right now, that's what we know, and she's still in the wind, which means that she's still on the show and she's not off the show like we thought she'd be, like not answering questions. I like that she's still in the game. Victor's dad, maybe he'll find out that he bumped into his wife in the wild and like tried to connect with her when she became alive again.
I would like to know and feel confident that the writers and creators of this show know where it's going, because right now I just feel like it's chaos. They're like, ooh, and then this happened. Ooh, and then this is going to happen. But there's no structure. It just feels like I'm like a free fall.
What do you say to that, Bridget, though? Because I feel like there is a point there that Rachel's making, is that we can only go this far in without having an anchor of some kind to some rule can't be broken or something. I'm not there yet, but I'm seeing the writing on the wall, too.
I don't know. I feel like it would take the fun out of it.
I agree, but you do run into the problem where we're watching people suffer for no reason.
I am not having fun. This is torture for me.
So I'm kind of where Sharondy's at in an interesting way, because I can handle the torture and the some of the horror elements and I can handle that. But I like that Sharondy said, like, I feel for these people. I have a connection to these characters. I care what happens to them. And so seeing them suffer in this manner, I'm still invested in the show. I'm just wondering how far they can push this envelope. For instance, my gut instinct, right? We watch a lot of shows. We analyze a lot of shows. There are waves. You win some, you lose some. This episode, there was a lot of losses. And like we mentioned, I don't even know if it was in the show, nothing was funny. Because occasionally there are some funny elements on this show, but nothing was funny in this episode. Well, maybe there was one, but it gets lost. It gets lost in all the suffering.
The lady coming to Elgin was pretty funny. I don't know.
We always find that part funny, though. Woo! Anyway,
because Tilly's like, she's scary. And I was like, no, she's not. She's ridiculous.
I should say this, though. It's kind of like Sarah's whining, the in pain thing that we didn't see for like a whole season until she finally showed it somewhere near the end of the second season. The viewer reaction to seeing the ghost lady push Elgin down the bathtub going, woo! and they said, let's not do that again, because the audience did not. They kind of laughed at that part. So she didn't do it again in this episode.
She's still not scary, though, because she's just standing there with her like long, weird fingers.
Bridget, I'm quoting you. I think that's intentional. Oh, you weren't here when I said it. I think there may be some intentionality in that, because just like the radio call that Jim made, was it a threat or was it not a threat? Is this woman meant to be
left vague?
Right. Clearly he's scared, but maybe she's not a malevolent force.
Well, she's trying to drown him in the tub, Dave. So,
but was she trying to drown him, or was she trying to wake him up to protect him? It could be interpreted another way if you look beyond the surface of
maybe she was the ballerina. Like.
See, that I can see.
Could be. Oh, and that would kind of make a little bit more sense to Rachel's concern about what is this random ballerina that Boyd's dancing with? But what if that was the ballerina? And what if she was an actual ballerina in the town? She died. Which got me in thinking of another thing. Okay, hang in there. Ethan says the thing about Alma, please slaughter Alma first so that she doesn't have to watch her friends die. Alma, by the way, in Spanish means soul. We found that out when we were watching Tales of the Walking Dead, that 5th episode. Anyway, where do these animals come from? Randomly in the forest, right? What did we see in this episode? Kenny and Jim find some sort of settlement, quote unquote, with all these little scarecrow things.
Very obviously that was the Blair Witch's camp.
Oh, in homage, sure.
That's Eloise living out there like a pioneer.
She's like a Blair Witch. Eloise Kavanaugh.
What do you think those statues are? Do you think they're all the people that come to the town and like she makes like a talisman or something about them? That's what I think it is.
They have a crown of thorns on their head. It's
I get like a scarecrow vibe, like to scare something away.
Maybe.
Yeah, like a scarecrow. And it's like a coronet,
also,
too.
What was up with the footsteps? Something comes and like is on the outside of that structure and then just leaves, which is not like the monsters. The monsters come and they like say weird stuff like, you should let us in, so it like wasn't them.
I have cookies.
I think it's Eloise and she's been surviving out here this whole time. She's like Robin Williams in Jumanji. She's lived there so long, like she knows how to survive. She walked up and she's like, oh, these poor guys need to stay in here more than I do because I know how to stay safe out in the bush or whatever.
Victor's been there that whole time too. Why wouldn't she come back and teach her brother all the things that she knows?
Maybe she went
point.
crazy out there. Maybe she came back to town and saw everybody dead and she lost her mind and went out and lived in the woods. Who knows? She was a little kid. Maybe she thought Victor was dead. Maybe she doesn't know Victor's alive.
Good counterpoint.
There was a lot of years that Victor was supposedly by himself.
Well, let me take a few steps back because I was trying to make a point. We'll mention the fact that the scarecrow things seem to be pointing towards the settlement. One of the twigs is pronouncedly pointing in the direction they need to go.
Okay. I was
I
like, I
got
didn't
you.
think they
Okay.
had arms.
Yeah.
Okay.
But each one points to a specific direction.
Yeah,
Like
they were-
once they get to the left, it goes points to the right to go to the town. Anyway,
I got you.
I bring this up because it's just weird that they happen to find livestock in the forest. Boyd goes out in the forest. The only reason why they have livestock to begin with is Boyd ventures out into the forest. What?
They're not only in the forest, Dave, they venture into the edge of town. The townspeople have found them.
Boyd figured out that there was livestock in the forest and started bringing them back. Chickens, cows, sheep, goats. The first thing he finds is a goat. He's like, wait, what?
They said that they found them on the edges of town.
The edge of the forest is literally what he said. Right. Until then, they hadn't thought, they're like, the forest is scary. We don't want to go there. We're just trying to fight to survive. They didn't even think about organizing. Anyway, the point I wanted to make was it is random. And I was thinking to myself, but what if Alma was a person?
What?
What if the cow was a person?
I can't.
Rachel left.
Rachel just leaves.
I wanted to.
I didn't know we could do that.
I would like to. I'm done now. I like this show. I'm sorry. This podcast has gone off the freaking rails, dude. We are throwing out so many random things. It doesn't even make sense. Like, we can theorize a little, but like, this has gotten crazy.
But on the flip side, any of these theories have just as much legs to stand on as any other ones. Why not? Sure.
And bear in
Alma
mind,
was a person.
Alma was the
Why
first
not?
goat that they found. That's the one that Boyd brought back.
What?
Yeah.
How do you know that?
I'm not ready to say that. Did
That,
she
you
say
know that from
I'm
the
Alma?
time he went out in the woods. Remember, okay, the whole reason why Abby went crazy is because Boyd was
Yeah,
obsessed
I
with
know.
going out
He
to
went
the
and got
woods.
the goat. I remember the goat,
Right.
but like, you
Right,
remember
right.
which goat it is?
How do you
Yeah,
know that
I
it's
remember which
Alma?
goat it was.
How?
Yep, because it was mentioned. And it's me.
What?
So of course
Okay.
I'll
He
remember it.
studied the fur
Struck a chord with
pattern
me.
and matched them up while he was
Are you
watching.
sure?
I just go by what they said. I didn't really study the fur. I don't
Okay.
care about animals, really. I don't care so
I don't
much.
know.
It's fine.
You know what? Sure. Alma used to be a person. Maybe Alma's the ballerina.
Almost the key to this whole thing.
Are you being for real though, or are you being like facetious right now?
I'm being facetious.
No,
Just,
it's
just to
just-
be clear.
No, I know.
I'm
You
not
are.
though. I'm not being facetious. It is just weird. It's just, why are they in the forest to begin with? Now, okay, counter theory, something
the
that's based
whole
in
thing
reality,
is weird.
is that maybe the person that lives out by the log cabins, maybe she found these animals originally and brought them into the woods where the settlement was. I don't think it's a settlement anymore. It doesn't look like it's been inhabited in a while,
Sure.
but maybe that's where they originally were from.
I don't even know that this settlement exists. Maybe they wake up in the morning and it's just flat ground and they were never inside of a building to begin with. Boyd told them to look for the spider webs. I don't even think they're real. I think Boyd dreamed them
I
up.
see the spider webs. They're right behind you.
Spooky season is upon us.
This is my frustration. We are able to go off in so many different directions and there's nothing solid to hold on to.
Bridget, you thought this was fun, but this suddenly turned into not fun.
Well, because I'm more like, oh, that's cool. I don't know what's happening. I'll have to wait for the next episode. But these conversations have gone in so many directions because you guys are like trying to solve those answers. One, I don't think you're going to be able to. Two, I think the answers that you're coming up with are so insane that I'm like, are you okay? Are you okay?
Oh, I'm not.
No,
Are you
because
okay?
we're
Because
watching
I'm
the
not
show.
okay now.
You have to give people something to hold on to. There has to be some sort of anchor along the way to keep you going. Otherwise, you're just, like you said, you're
Spinning
you're
out.
layering mystery on top of mystery.
Yeah.
It's like kind of when the prosecution drowns you in mountains of circumstantial evidence so deeply that you can't get out of it. And then you're tied up in litigation and you're spending all this money on your lawyers just to get your balls out of court.
Very
It's
strange
mountains of
comparison,
nothing that
but
ends
yeah.
up bearing you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just
AMC
saying, I'm
finally
feeling
sued
what
him.
you're feeling, but we're in different places.
Yeah.
I'm liking the waves I'm riding on. I'm cool with it. I don't need to see the end to know I'll get there. I'll know if they pull it off.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, I'm okay with that too.
I'd be remiss if I didn't say I see what you're saying.
The reason I always say, oh, what if the moon wore pants? Sometimes I think our theorizing just goes like too far off the rails.
I hear what you're saying, but I think there is something to be said about the point isn't really to say that they were formerly people, but why aren't people questioning more why there's livestock at the edge of the forest? So what is the significance of that? You don't have to comment on it. It's just worth throwing out there. These people are taking it for granted.
If this is some sort of like temporal rift or something where you can exist in so many different places across the United States, if that's how that is, then are these livestock just wandering in?
The same way as people are, but never into town. It's just so weird.
We don't know that.
We don't,
though.
As far as we know,
you don't really.
It's never happened.
You don't really, because they haven't talked about it enough. They don't go and like say like, we found this goat at this location, we found this cow at this location. They don't do that.
Let me put it to you this way. Up until Boyd finds them, for the people that have lived there the longest, obviously Don. When we see that flashback of Boyd coming into town, you see Katri, Donna, and somebody else. Doesn't really matter.
Yeah,
Dale.
For as long as those people have been there for a year, they're like, "What livestock? What? We never thought about going to the fort," because they were so terrified that they didn't think they could do anything.
So what were they eating before that?
Well, there were canned goods, and they were eating stuff out of the vehicles that were coming in.
All the people that left behind.
I understood that to illustrate more of the point that they were just in survival mode prior to Boyd coming. Boyd showing up, he helps them to organize. Now, that's kind of like that weird savior trope where you're like, really, all these people were complete idiots. They couldn't figure out anything prior to Boyd being here. That seems stupid and not real, but it's a trope and it's a thing. You know, he's the guy who's like going to figure it out for you.
He's Mr. Fish and Loaves.
Yeah, fine. But he did luck into finding the talisman. Prior to the talisman, they're up all night terrified that they're going to die. So you're sleeping during the day. Any moment
their ticket could be punched.
So you're sleeping during the day.
Yeah.
So when are you even able to get anything done?
Yeah, true.
That is exactly the point. Yeah. Sure.
He literally fell into it. Literally.
You know what's even funnier than that? The people that keep coming into this town are living off of all the hordes of people that have undoubtedly passed and left all this food or whatever they had in their cars behind. Was probably a lot.
Now they've run out because they've lived longer than anybody else up to this point. One, it's impressive, but two, now it's almost like it's
escalation,
mutated or like evolved the way that this place operates, because it has to now adjust for the fact that they found the talisman, can keep themselves alive longer, have food. So now it's adjusting to prevent that from continuing.
We know that it is changing too, because they comment on the leaves.
And
the leaves are changing, and the weather's it's getting colder. And
is it safe to say that their survival is killing this place too? Because it is, in senses, it's dying. Ground is poisoned. The leaves are falling off the trees. We attribute that to seasons, but it could just be that them having hope or them surviving or holding on. Maybe they are winning. They just don't know that they're winning. It's worth thinking about.
Have they ever said how long Boyd has been there?
More than 3 months.
6 months? Yeah, because 3 months of peace, 3 months of organizing.
No, it was 3 months after they found the talisman until Megan died.
Well,
the Pratts.
Ellis made a comment about seeing Fatima's car a year or something after. He was like 1 year after something or what.
They were celebrating her 1 year anniversary, right?
Oh,
and Ellis.
So she had to have shown up while they were there.
Got there before them because he saw her get out of her car.
Okay, that makes sense.
Of course, Victor's only said that it's hasn't changed since he's been there. We have no idea what happened before that.
Correct.
Yeah.
This could be something that the place naturally does when too many people get there or something and they can't manage to kill them off.
Sorry, I am absolutely going to interrupt and cut you off because I have to go, and I'm going to leave you with this. Ever since the first season, my off-the-wall theory, what I felt was it reminds me of some weird Twilight Zone episode where there's some kid playing with a dollhouse and these people are in a dollhouse. Why do the animals keep showing up? Because some kid plopped a cow in the dollhouse or something stupid like that. And, the house collapsed. Oh, that's because some kid crushed it with his thumb.
And it happens to be invisible in this
Horton
case.
Here's a Who effect.
Yep. Have fun.
Love you,
speculating.
Ray.
Storming the castle.
Love you guys.
Bye.
Good luck tomorrow.
Bye.
I think that when Abby, in quotes, said you have to give up hope, Boyd, that's what this place lives off of is hope. I think that the hope is actually killing it. And that was its way of trying to shut
Defending
it down.
itself.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I was saying about the ground poisoning.
So that's
and the
why
leaves.
they're trying
It's
to
changing.
crush Boyd, because he is a driving force of hope in this environment. He's the one who keeps pushing them, saying like, it's okay, we're going to make it. Like, I'm not going to let this place crush us. This place doesn't win. We have to win. That's lighting hope in other people. And so I think this season is really going to be about Boyd struggling to maintain hope. I think he's going to lose that hope.
I will tell you, what you're saying is super interesting because of the forces behind everything. Because there's the middle place where a warning could be a threat. So there's that aspect of it.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's the monsters. Now we know that every time it's going after somebody and the cow ripping the thing out and Jade it's like relishing in Jade's fear. It's living off of that pain, that fear, that terror. And then rounding up Boyd to make him watch Tien-Chen get murdered in front of him, having him watch and staring at her, saying, which by the way, she says something that is repeated multiple times at the end. And he goes, say it again, say what you said again. So I can remember, basically in Cantonese, he will be alone. He has no one. Talking about Kenny. And throughout this entire episode, one of the things that is prominent is orphaning your children for going out on this quest. And Jim saying, we got to go back. I can't risk.
I was shocked that he left.
Leaving my kids as orphans.
Him and Tabby had that whole conversation about how it could only be one of them. Otherwise, their kids would be left alone.
Well, clearly some time has passed.
Where you don't know either what's going to happen with Ethan and Julie. They're with Sarah. They're hiding. They're going to run again. I think Jim's going to come back. They might still be missing. So he's going to blame himself for that. Kenny's going to be blaming himself for his mom. There might also be a little bit of blame thrown Boyd's way just because
he's the one that gives them the hope.
He's close with Boyd, so we're always the hardest on the people that we love.
Well, and the people that give us permission to also.
Yeah, and Boyd already feels guilty about lying to Kenny about Sarah and that whole thing with his dad. So, like, I just feel like some of that is going to kind of splash back on Boyd, too. That's just my theory.
That'd be a bit tropey, though, wouldn't it, though?
I think it's within reason.
Yeah, I guess so. Because we have to hold on to some sort of
she's going to get murdered in front of Boyd. To Kenny, it's going to be like, is my mom worth the livestock?
But she was one who helped also. But that's what he's going to say.
She understands the weight of it, but like, he's not going to be thinking straight. He'll probably blow up on Chrissy too, just because I think it's going to get blown kind of all over. That's how it is when you're hurt.
I will say one thing, that the show does leave us in such a place that it's hard to tell what will happen.
Yeah.
If we're even past night, because we may continue from where we left off.
I think it might continue from where it is right now.
Kind of like what you were saying. And also, I think we're minimizing the trauma that Boyd's just gone through too. I don't know how you can come back from that.
He's begging them, kill me instead. They are not going to kill him. That's the whole point.
But if the point was to get rid of him because his hope is what's keeping it Boyd, then why wouldn't you just kill him and get rid of him? Because if anything would destroy hope in the town, it would be losing Boyd.
Or he's a martyr. We're all Boyd. We need to keep his flame alive.
And maybe that's the fear.
Right. And it would be more beneficial to them to see a broken Boyd walking around town like The Walking Dead.
Yeah.
What would make you lose hope faster than the person who is walking around saying, there's no hope? It's just, no, I was the most hopeful person. Now I'm not. That's probably where they want him. But I can easily see, and this is, I hope they go in this direction, him losing absolute hope all the way throughout the end of just the end of season 3. But everybody else, instead of collapsing in on themselves, one of the cool things we've seen in the show is that Kenny rises up when Boyd has his Parkinson's and the worms and all that stuff. And he's like losing hope and he can't do the blood transfusion. He's muddling through. He's very afraid of giving people the worms, but other people are stepping up. Kenny has the gun in his face and everything. And Ellis gets stabbed and Elgin hops into the car. This timid guy who had this dream and he's afraid. He's in this place. He doesn't know anything, but he says, I'm going to bring the car around. They drive Ellis through the middle of the night. Something in the past they would never thought they would have done. But the mark that we have on people may have a bigger effect than the person themselves, is what I'm saying.
It's truly affecting those in the community that do have the most hope. I mean, take a look at what it did to Donna. It eviscerated Colony House so that Donna would second guess herself as a leader.
And an a-hole like Randall comes in and she snaps back.
Yeah, so she's not there to like spread hope. It's trying to break down Kenny. Even Sarah, who was hopeful at least that if she listened to this thing that she could get everybody home. It had her kill her own brother.
Accidentally, but I get it.
Come on.
Yeah.
You know.
Hey, that girl suffered enough. I don't want to hear her crying again.
Oh my God. Oh, neither do I.
But you know what? It is a funny thing that I brought up the livestock. I'm not going back to that chestnut. But what I am saying is that aren't these people livestock for the monsters?
Yeah.
Their fear, their terror. What if that's all they are to them? Oh, what if this place is dying? What if it can't feed the livestock, which feeds them? So they need to do something to readjust the dials to keep them in check. Because if you think about them just like predators, that there's a single focus, there's an instinct to feed rather than it being actually self-aware. No, they're purposeful. They need something from them, these monsters. You just have to say, oh, they're adjusting their dials in compensation for the environment.
Or the monsters are just like orcs and they're bred or made to be these creatures.
That's kind of what I'm thinking.
There's a Saruman somewhere who is controlling and creating these monsters to do this.
Sure.
Why is Saruman doing it? Maybe you just hit on something when you said this is like a game for somebody where they're just putting pieces in. I've been watching Good Omens. What if you have a good and evil battle going on and good is playing on one side and evil is playing on the other, and they're using humans to pit them against each other to see what will happen, who will win?
It heavily seems like that's what's happening.
Well, that's why I mentioned the priest to begin with.
I loved the part when Boyd was talking to Father Khatri.
Which, by the way, means warrior in Arabic.
He was like, if that was made to do something, then what are you?
Oh, he was talking about Abby.
If Abby was meant to stop me,
That wasn't
then what are
his
you meant to
Abby.
do?
Right, what are you meant to
Basically.
be? Maybe Father Khatri is a mediator or on the good side. Maybe they have rules. It's not really Father Khatri.
It's like a construct. To your point about this series, there could be a hierarchy of some kind. The monsters are on one level, the worm being thing that's now in the ether somewhere, maybe, or it stopped with the music box, maybe. We don't know. But that's like another hierarchy.
I feel like we're going to come down to what Lost was ultimately, which was the guy in white and the guy in black. And they were playing backgammon with the people on the island. And I have the feeling that's exactly what's going on here. Still going with aliens.
If this was Stephen King, it probably would be aliens. That's not what you would do. That's not normal. And then he'll be like, oh yeah, it's aliens.
There's some sort of order to what this is all about. And whatever, it depends on the game that they're playing. On Jade, they're trying to make him go crazy about the symbol. And maybe that's the point. For a guy who likes to figure things out, that's the worst thing you could do to him.
That's exactly what it is.
Jade.
He's too logical and it's breaking him.
My man, trim that thing. It is
Oh, dude,
so
yeah, his
bad.
beard was looking
Every season,
ridiculous.
by the way.
Where
Every season
is
premiere.
Jessie? Even though she's like the worst haircut, I would even go with a bowl cut on this dude.
You're saying on The Walking Dead?
You give him a Sam. I don't even care, but do something with the
Anderson?
hair.
Jesse
Listen.
Anderson. That's what she said. Give him a cut.
I think the actress should just show up. Why not?
Alexandra
and she'll be named
Breckenridge.
Jesse Anderson. All of this to say, as much as we're not getting answers, there's clearly forces at work, both inside and outside this stuck place that are working on these people specifically. You didn't have to have a stuck place, but we do have one. I feel like things are coalescing, although it is a strong opener to start out with tremendous tragedy just to see where it'll go from there. Will they S the bed? I don't know. I'm actually eager to see how they pull this off. I love when both season enders and season openers have this impossible situation that you have to write yourself out of. And I don't mean writing as in you don't know where this is going. I mean writing as in let's be intricate. Let's weave an appropriate path to get to where we want the show to go. That's what I can't wait to see. Us spitballing is just having fun.
I really hate that they turned me off so hard because I was enjoying the show, but it made me feel so bad that I don't feel like I can go back again. So I'll just learn from you guys or read reviews or something. I just won't physically watch it anymore.
Even before we get into first impressions, we'll go, hey, guys, was this a Share and Be Safe episode? And then you'll get the thumbs up. And then you'll watch, and you come back to the episode, and then you'll have what to say about it.
Well, I figure I'll just
comments or
jump in the
whatever.
comments and go along with you guys, and then I'll go watch it afterwards. Or after you guys watch it on Sunday, just be like, hey, Sharon, it's okay. You can watch it.
Now that you've gone through season 1 and season 2, and now that we're going to watch it live, I think you can start to let some of that go. I get you had a lot of time and energy invested into Lost, and so it's like frustrating to see something similar. I feel like the further in we get, the less you and Rachel really talk about it.
I also may feel differently watching week to week rather than binging.
I think so.
That's what I was trying to hit on with the season 2 recap. I like the narrative elements of orphaning children and refusing to. I like that Jim backpedaled. I like that Jim saw the danger and said, you know what? Boyd was right, basically.
Well, he was being
Fine.
nuts too. He's like, let's stay in this structure that we don't know is safe.
Kudos to Victor for pulling a gun on Randall for trying to take the goat. You go, friend.
Yeah, it was pretty great.
You're the guy.
That was pretty great. I love that. I love that he just keeps pulling out this gun and like every time it gets taken away and somehow he still has it again.
Well, it wasn't taken away the first time.
It keeps happening.
He put it back in his lunchbox and then he wandered off into the woods for several episodes.
Yeah, it's true.
This time he got it taken away.
I love it. Jim was acting really crazy though, because he wanted to stay in the village. It was like so weird out of nowhere. It's like, this was not your plan. Boyd told you where to go and like how to get there. And you're like, no, this is better. And so I was glad that when he was afraid, then he was like, oh yeah, I'm probably wrong. And I probably should just go home.
You know what? That's genuine to his character because what did we see all of season 2? This is the Rachel's critique. And this is the key to figuring out this place, right? He kept saying that, like, if we just get the message out in the first season, if we just do this, if we just do that. So there is something about that. Well, I got to do this because I got to find my wife.
Right.
And that's genuine. I like it.
So I was listening to something about the dating game show killer, Rodney Alcala, who had murdered like 100 women and he was on the dating game. The woman who chose him was like, yeah, he's creepy. I'm not going out with this guy. They were talking about how they got caught. And it was because after getting away with it so many times, they start to feel cocky.
Yep.
Nothing's going to kill me. So how many times has Jim survived in weird spots? The RV, the house, the woods. So maybe he's like, hey, I am invincible. I have survived this a million times and nothing has happened.
Right. Maybe not to that degree, but
That's fair.
Then he
That's fair.
gets into there and all of a sudden he's like, I'm not invincible. Like something could happen.
And what's the last thing that Julie said? Be safe. Be careful.
This is where I'm going, but we're just not at the right place yet. Maybe this is where he was dragged past it. He's just so insistent. And also maybe feels like he's losing time if they have to turn around and go back. I'm losing time that I could be using
That's what
to
I thought
find
too.
my wife.
I think it's interesting that Randall, we haven't seen Maribel, but
Oh, Marielle, you mean?
sorry. Whatever. Mary Sue, whatever the hell her name is. They haven't spoken about what's happened to them. It must have been really bad. It was obviously very traumatic. I am eager to learn what it is that they saw. I think that'll get revealed eventually.
They saw Martin and they're like, oh my God, an old skinny guy. Ah!
With long nails like the monsters, by the way. I just wanted to point that out. Just before he gives up Alma, he says something to the effect of, you just don't know.
And Julie says something too. Where like Jim is like, are you okay? And she's like, I'm fine.
She's not.
She's not.
Right. A lot of the people are exhibiting the stages of grief. Right when they turn to Tabitha, some
You
sort
mean
of grief.
Fatima?
Okay, I meant Fatima. Having the morning sickness. Nikki's knocking on her door. And it's anger. What are the stages of grief again? There's anger, denial,
Bargaining.
Depression, acceptance.
right, Jim is bargaining. It's like, oh, if we stay here, blah, blah. They're all exhibiting the different stages of grief.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say that she's now pregnant with the worm monster. She's going to give birth to the head monster or something.
I am fearful that it will not be a baby.
I'm not ready to go there yet, but the thought that did occur to me was that she wasn't meant to have a baby.
Mhm.
And so her body may be reacting accordingly to that fact.
I did like Donna's speech about like, and this was in season 2, but out of everything that
Right.
you've seen, like, how can you not believe that a miracle would be possible here?
And then you start to understand why, though, actually, because Tabitha being out in the real world is an example of that.
Yeah.
It's a miracle that you're here, Tabitha, that you're in the real world after being in a place where you're told you never get out of.
But if
So
there
I get
are
it now.
good and bad forces at work, then what else could rally people to hope than a child? That's hope of a future.
He's Anakin.
I don't like that.
The New Hope?
A new hope. I don't like that.
I don't know.
He'll hate sand too.
I can see that easily being the thing that people will obviously think.
People heal faster too.
Jade's beard.
That's how they explain how Ethan is like 14 now.
I know.
Yeah. I was wondering how they were going to solve that problem because I would absolutely hate it. And I did think about this. Hate it if they recast him because he's growing too old too fast.
I'm pretty sure that they recast the boy in white because that kid,
Mm,
I think he looked a little different.
I'm pretty sure it's him.
I think he just added a wig.
Oh, I'm pretty sure it's still
Maybe.
him. He's got like the same face.
Yeah, I think it's
just
still him
he's gotten
too.
older.
I think he's just losing weight.
Losing the pudgy kid stage.
You know what? We've put a lot of thoughts out there. I think it's worth it to just leave it there. And this is a problem with these episodes is that for real, let's talk, because as we go through these episodes by episode, we're obviously going to reach into the episode we just discussed to bring up facts that are relevant to the next episode. And then that will compound and that will compound. Probably worth it to leave it here because we have a lot to say about this show, because there is a lot to say about the show, too much to say about the show. And some of it that isn't real. I'm sorry. Maybe the animals aren't people that lived in this town.
I just felt like
Instant
I had
reincarnation.
to shut it down, Dave.
You had to shut that down? That's
shut
fine.
it down.
I just was trying to connect it because we didn't get there to the settlement that Jim and
I
Kenny
get where your
find.
head was
That's
at.
all.
I just couldn't handle it.
It's interesting that we see this new element. I am actually wondering where that goes, if it goes anywhere at all, because they use the hell out of those scarecrows in the promos, by the way.
Something's going to happen there because we're not out of the night.
And maybe you're right.
Yet. Something's going to happen.
Maybe it's Eloise.
I think those are totems. I think they're representative of the people in the town.
Well, if you like what you've heard, maybe we hit on something that you liked too. Maybe we hit on something you really didn't like the moon wearing pants with the people and the animals. Head over to ratethis.podcast.com/squawkingdead. 5 stars and a scarecrow is all we need to know that you love us. But tell us what you liked. Tell us what you didn't like. Tell us again what you didn't like. Keep telling us what you didn't like. But remember to tell us after every single episode. It really counts. Leave a comment in this YouTube video if you are watching this on YouTube. Leave a like. Also, we should say that at the top of the show. I never do. If you really like what we're doing and you want to make these episodes a lot more fuller, because your help in doing so will add more flavor to the show that you seem to like because you're watching along with us. Consider heading over to ko-fi.com/squawkingdead or patreon.com/squawkingdead and just following us so that you can take part in these episode discussions in the chat. It's free to attend these recording sessions and it's free to follow. The only place to get the schedule is on our Ko-fi or Patreon pages. Tip us and get access to the unedited version of this episode, which is undoubtedly going to be out of this. You should have seen the season 1 and 2 recaps. They're absolutely out there and hysterical.
It really was.
And the notes are even worse.
It really was funny.
Can you imagine what we didn't talk about?
When you did Rachel, because she was sitting so far back and you're like, this is you, and you pushed yourself way back.
Do you guys think that? Yeah,
That
exactly.
made me laugh so hard. Okay.
And it's much longer in the unedited episode, which is even funnier to think about for us. Consider joining a membership tier too, because when you do, you'll get even more perks. Tipping alone gives you access to our Discord so you can join in the fun. But when you join a membership tier, you get more access to our Discord, the unedited episodes, the pre-squawk insights, which is all the things that we didn't talk about that I wrote down that will never see the light of day. Maybe in a future episode, you never know. When you join the Whispers, Survivors, and Great M tier, you'll get a free t-shirt upon signing up, 50% off in the merch store. If you join the Great M or Survivors tier, you can join us on camera and mic alongside us, giving the world your thoughts as we break down these episodes. If you happen to join the Great M tier, which is our producer tier, you'll get all of that and access to our core channel where we do all our planning that we can't even share with the people on Discord. It's just private, but you get to help us out. You get to be involved in budget meetings because, you know what, frankly, you're that Great M. I've been your host, David Cameo. I was joined by Cosmom09 Rachel Burt, who had to dip out, Sharon D.K. Blazy Gardner, and Bridget, ko-fi.com/Punky Brewster. That's PUNKYBRUISETER. Bridget, honestly, I know that Sharon D's out, but I cannot wait to see what happens after this episode. So I can't wait to break it down.
I'm really
I
excited.
can't wait for you guys to talk about it so I can hear what happened and I don't have to actually suffer through
To see if it's Sharon D safe first of all,
Right.
and to see if it went somewhere. But let me say what I don't like. I like the fact that Walking Dead Daryl Dixon is having its season 2 premiere on Sunday. What I don't like is having to record 2 episodes a week. But with your
Yeah.
help, I think we can get it done. So consider joining a membership tier ASAP to help fund these efforts because it's really expensive. Then I wrote a post about it. You should read it. It's very not heartwarming. In fact, it's very sad, like the show sometimes. But check it out. It's free. It's not behind a paywall. Most things are not up behind a paywall except for the unedited episodes and pre-squawk insights. We have a lot to say. And to that end, we'll see you next week with both episodes of Daryl Dixon. And
I'm excited for Daryl Dixon.
Get your Dixon on.
The first episode is bomb. I can't wait for everybody to see
Shut
it.
up.
It's really good. It's so good. I'm so excited for you to watch.
I'm so excited.
I saw it for a second time a couple nights ago, by the way, with Celtic TSO. The Rooftop Films premiere for it, which is the same organization that ran it last year. So it was pretty cool. A lot of promotional stuff.
Was there free stuff?
Nah, it was popcorn and box of macarons. No swag,
I watched
basically.
the opening scene last night. They have it on YouTube.
The first 10 minutes?
Yeah. It goes up to Carol.
For U.S. audiences only, by the way. Oh, you spoiled it. Just kidding. It's called The Book of Carol.
Did they make a typo and it's the Book of Daryl? Or is it the Book of Carol, Caryl? Wouldn't that get some people going?
So glad we ended the episode a couple seconds ago.